We are live again. Hello, everyone, with episode 7 of the Power of Intentional Partnerships in this mini series for CEPHR. So excited to highlight yet another partner today. Thank you so much for joining. You might still be joining in, and we are live streaming today to LinkedIn and to YouTube. So I'm excited that I get to have this conversation on Mental Health Awareness Month. We have a guest who is definitely experienced enough to share some information with you all on this topic today. But let me just take a moment, though, in case you're new to this mini series, just to reacclimate you or introduce you to it. This mini series is really designed to highlight our partners and their work, as well as the work that we've done together. It's designed to talk about how you build strong partnerships and relationships, how you make that stick, what goes into it, and building a foundation of a partnership. Now, this mini series has evolved from entrepreneurship to really helping you with even some tips that if you're collaborating in the workspace, in a traditional workforce, that can help you as well. But today, I couldn't be more proud to highlight my next guest on the Power of Intentional Partnerships. Her name is Kelly Pallanti. She is principal consultant, CEO, and founder of Mentally Fit Workplaces, and she's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to mental health and mental health awareness. I love having her as our newest strategic partner, and I can't wait to share with you all what we've been up to and what's next. So let's uncover what goes into intentionally creating these relationships and hear from another of our partners on her top tips of what makes it successful in entrepreneurship in the workplace. And tell us what you want to hear throughout the comments, what would be helpful for a toolkit. But without further ado, I'm going to welcome my good, talented friend, Kelly. Welcome, Kelly.
Hello, Tiffany. So glad to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yes, thank you for saying yes to the invitation. And happy
Of
Mental
course.
Health Awareness Month.
Yes, this is my month. I get excited about. We really get to bring awareness to such an important topic, and it's such a great launching off point for organizations who have been thinking that they should do something about mental health, and this is a time to start putting those plans into action. So excited to be here and talk further about how we both together can advance mental health at work.
Yes, definitely. And you and I connected on a potential opportunity. And so that's how we kind of know each other. And we built this relationship and we collaborated on our article that we're going to talk about. But
Yeah.
before we get into all of those juicy details, I only gave them a snippet of who you are and what you do, but it's always best from our own voice. So can you share with the audience what it is you do and what lights you up about it?
All right. Well, again, my name is Kelly Pallanti. I'm an HR consultant. I've been in the HR profession 20 plus years now. As we know, there's a wide umbrella for HR. So I've done a lot of things in my career, but specifically on career development and DEIB. So in 2020, like many HR professionals, I was sitting in an HR director seat, and I got so many, I would say, inquiries, questions about mental health for the employees. And of course, not only about resources and things I could provide for them, but then also for myself as an HR person, providing that support for people in the organization. And it really made me want to elevate mental health, not only as providing resources, but what can organizations do to provide a workplace that is mentally safe for workers?
I
So
love
that
that.
is the passion. That is what I'm really talk most about now. And as we'll talk about, our article is something that's come out recently from the US. My work originally started in Australia and Canada, where I learned so much about how the legislation they have, best practices that they do already in organizations there. So I'm trying to bring those things to the US and really elevate organizations to care for the total worker. That's what I try to think about. Our brain is attached to the whole body. It's included. I know insurance companies tell us that our eyes and our teeth are not included in the total care, and mental also is separate, but it really is total care for workers is what we're talking about.
Yeah, welcome, Melody. Welcome, everyone. She's coming from Massachusetts. Melody is just lovely.
Yeah.
It's okay. Your perspectives are welcome. If there's something you want to hear about or any questions, let us know. I love, Kelly, how you talked about the total worker, and even the language we use matters so much in mental health, in diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. And I love how you use gender neutral language too of the total worker, because we're also conditioned to think of everything or everyone as, male or female. And in some languages, as we know, it's neutral. There isn't, that. And so we have a long journey in the US ahead of us and other places as well to understand that. But that really stood out to me. So thanks for sharing that.
Yes, because I really try to, mental health, as we know in the past, has been a taboo, topic, and I think many people agree that the pandemic has given us the opportunity to break down that stigma. But
Mhm.
when I talk about it with leaders, really, it's just equating physical health with mental health, and that's where the total, really comes in. Is that they really shouldn't be separate. Is really just treating, the whole person. And
Mhm.
honestly, post pandemic, this is really what workers are looking for. These are, the kind of organizations that people want to join.
Absolutely. And we're hearing that all the time. I know we're talking to our clients, our family, our community, our friends all the time about this. Those expectations have shifted. I think this is a good segue to maybe talk about our article, but what are
Yes.
you seeing out there as trends? And we could just like hop right in. We'll let you read the whole article for yourself, but we could share, why we thought it was a great idea to collaborate on it, and the general framework of it, for you all, and then you could go read more yourself later.
Yes. So first of all, the title, of course, "The New World of Work." This, of course, this is a progressive title. We're always looking forward. In most professions, you're in a strategic outlook. You want to look for what is coming up. You want to be an organization that is proactive, not reactive to situations. And I think if we like I said, we don't have to look very far to know that mental health is in the view coming up. One of the things that I talk about a lot is this new generation that we're going to of workers that's coming up, which is Gen Z, and then the ones following Gen Alpha, and their expectations of the workplace. Our article that we wrote together, "The New World of Work," is based on this really new framework that came out from the U.S. Surgeon General just in October of 22. And he outlines these basically 5 essentials that you need for workplace mental health. And it is a great framework, but really what I think what is some value in the article that Tiffany and I wrote is we give you some action steps, because I think oftentimes it's one of those topics, yes, I want to do something about it, but what can I do? And
Mhm.
so this really is like, no, these are the small things that you can do right now to really just take those steps toward destigmatizing mental health.
Yeah, so such key points, Kelly, and we're just at a different time. In fact, I was on a call with a client earlier, and we were talking about how remote work has shifted things, what those expectations are as they're recruiting and trying to continue engaging and retaining their team. These are all things that we had in mind when we wrote our article, because we know we've experienced it ourselves. We also know that we're hearing from our stakeholders, clients, community, our loved ones, what a difference it is. It's a different workplace. That's why it's called the new world of work. And we know that so many people feel like they can't show up as their full selves. We know that it becomes a buzzword, but what does that really mean? And how is the company shaping policies? How are they setting us up for success? Do we feel like we matter, as we share and talk about a lot in our article? Do we feel like we belong and we can contribute, and that it's a place we see ourselves growing?
I mean, even the words you use right now, belonging, I mean, all of that is really aligned, with DEI. And it is those practices of showing up. I mean, honestly, you cannot have mental health safety in an organization without it being psychologically safe. So without it being a place where they don't feel like there's going to be retribution, for speaking up or retaliation
Mhm.
against them, that a manager might use that information against them. People fear that, right now. And so, that's what I think, breaking down that it's a culture change, honestly, as we know, but it's those organizations that are going to be, again, proactive in changing that culture too, and understanding that there is a shift happening. The mattering at work, I think that's probably one of my favorite parts of the U.S. Surgeon General. I hear this so much. I hear this from senior leaders when they talk about wanting to feel valued at work. There's obviously compensation is always high up there the list of wants, but feeling valued is really a close tie. People want to feel like they matter at work. So I really love the practice around that too. And again, that's all with inclusion. You cannot have any of those separate. That's one of those all that go together.
Yeah, and such a great point there, because it ties back to what we talked about a couple minutes ago, but then also what you shared at the very beginning, because it's not this separation of our brains from the rest of our bodies, or it's all together. And the key here is, when you're looking at expectations, when you're looking at the workplace, we really should, and you touched on proactive versus reactive. I know that's something we share too, and why we wanted this to be a resource for people, and we're looking to build upon that as well. So we're hoping to get some feedback for you too, to create even more of a toolkit. But it really needs to be actionable, and in order for that to happen, we really have to set the right foundation and strategy. And that's everything from A to Z. It requires a lot of work, but part of why we wanted to create this is because we know that people don't even know where to start, and that can become a barrier. And we want to be a resource and kind of gateway to be able to help support you as you're looking at mental health in the organizations. And it's definitely a value that we share, which I appreciate.
Yes, I think we've talked about many times, and I said myself, it's going to sit in HR in the US. We don't have a role called mental health director like they do in other countries, inside organizations. So right now, this is going to sit under HR. It's kind of just a natural progression there. And I think that's why maybe it's a little bit, a little scary to take on, because it's another thing sometimes to put on someone's plate. But I think, what we're trying to do too is to show that it doesn't have to be just you. One of the reasons why Tiffany and I gravitated toward each other is because we're advocates for mental health. We're champions for this. And you have to find your other champions in the organization. And that's really just step one. And that could be all levels. That can be from the C, every level that, down, every position, whether you're remote or on site. So there are those champions, and that's who you need to find first. And that's who's going to help you get some of that work done.
I love that. And I love working with you, because we find so much synergy. And when you said that, I was like, oh, this leads us into like another piece of the framework, and another piece of our collaborative article is connection, which is connected to mattering at work. Do I feel like I belong? Maybe you invited me to the meeting, but are my ideas heard? Do I feel like this is a space where I really can be celebrated and where my voice is elevated? Or am I dismissed and feeling like, my contributions don't matter, or this organization does not put its people first? And connection is something that we need as humans. And when you talk about our mental health and the complete crisis that we're in right now, that was only heightened by the pandemic, as you mentioned earlier, Kelly. But then, it really has been a buildup over time. And now we're paying attention to it, much like other DEIB activities. But it's really, has to be centered on the person. You spend all this time and money and effort, energy on hiring someone, and then you get them in the door. And if you flip the script, you change the story, you didn't get the infrastructure underneath you to have that can impact someone's mental health, because now they're here and there's a bunch of uncertainty. And think about that from the perspective of someone who already came into the workplace and they may be facing some challenges. These are, kind of the things that we want to open perspectives up to, and awareness in people's minds. I don't know if there's anything else you're sharing. I see that Melody's sharing something here too.
Yes.
Yes.
Mental fitness. Yes.
Absolutely.
We're healing. The PTSD, honestly, not just like you said, it's not just pandemic, it's prior. It's the years of our parents, our grandparents never talking about mental health,
Mhm.
pushing that down and really kind of you're always okay. And that's why I really do love that campaign, are you okay? Because our
Yes.
natural response is yes. And really, we need to stop and think, am I okay? And is it okay to say, I'm not?
Mhm.
And then if somebody says to you, I'm not, how do you respond to that? Then, too, how do you support someone who says, hey, I'm not having, a good day today? It's also collective, as you know, like most things. Doesn't just sit in the workplace. It's your community, it's your home life, all those things impact mental health. So you need not only just the resources for the employee, and that's what I think a lot of employers are good at. They have some
Mhm.
kind of EAP, they have some kind of, sometimes even an ERG based around a support group.
Mhm.
But to me, it really puts a lot of the kind of onus on the employee, right? It says, listen, here you go, be resilient. We hear this word resilient a lot. Go be resilient. And I'm going to give you all these tools to go be resilient. I'm going to tell you to do self-care. I'm going to give you some days off to do that. But then, my thing is when they come back into the work environment, it also has to be safe from hazards, right? Like you can't
Mhm.
give somebody, a hard hat and then send them into a building where bricks just keep falling on their head. So you are giving them some protection, but you're not changing, the atmosphere. So that's what
Mm.
I really want, like to really make a change on is let's take this kind of holistic perspective almost. The employee, yes, has some responsibility, but also the employer too, and how they can support each other.
100%. And I love this because I just was working with a client yesterday and we're looking at, safety in the workplace, shifting the culture so that people understand. But that starts, too, when you're attracting someone, not just like, oh, hey, people are here, we should be safe. And so we think of physical safety. Oh, make sure there's no cords out. And this is all important too. Don't get me wrong. We don't want any work comp claims.
Yes, no, no,
We're trying
no.
to keep those down because we want people to leave safely to the workplace, whether they're working in their homes or at the workplace. But we think so easily of like, am I safe from a physical? But there are hazards from a psychological and a mental health and the things that we're doing in the workplace and how we're setting people up. And even if we talk to them, you just brought up EAP. Thank you for that. I know that we share, because we were just talking about it yesterday or 2 days ago,
Mhm.
the importance of an employee assistance program. But I think sometimes people lean too far on that and just say, oh, it's a resource, it's free, you get your 6 sessions
Check
or
the
whatever.
box.
Check the box, right?
Hmm.
Performative. And it's a great resource, don't get me wrong. But
Yeah.
really, to not have that be standalone, to recognize the moments when that might be needed. We were talking about how we share often about the employee assistance plan because, to your point, now we put the onus on the employee. What if they continue to have that stigma and that stigma's there? Do you really think? I've had employees say to me, well, I'm not calling that. I don't need a counselor. And I'm like, they can have legal, they can help you with legal and financial
All
counseling and
kinds.
all
Yep.
sorts of stuff. So
Yep.
that I love the point you made about like not putting the resilience and all
Mhm.
of that, upon the employee. Love it. Thanks for joining us, Samantha. Lovely. What
Yay.
other thoughts do you have on, kind of these workplace hazards or how employers can, maybe try to mitigate some of the risks of that?
A lot of it, as you said, there's kind of two sets here. There is a remote is does have different, really, they call them psychosocial hazards, sometimes than, on-site does. But they can be things that we're almost just used to. One that is like a mainstream word, we hear it all the time is micromanagement, right? Micromanagement is a psychosocial hazard. That's a hazard for an employee because think about what are the impacts impacts of micromanagement for the employee. Number one, it causes them to feel devalued. Two, it could cause a lot of physical responses, right? There is sometimes anxiety there that results in high blood pressure, digestive issues. I've seen, and then sometimes what happens from there is that you see a lot more absenteeism because people physically don't feel well because of how they feel at work. So a lot of that, comes back to, leadership too, training leaders on, again, what these hazards are, what to do to solve some of this. But a lot of it really kind of comes down to the culture as a whole too. Everything does have to, come up front, but everyone really needs to be on the same page, essentially. Sometimes I see organizations, they put a lot of effort into educating leadership on these topics, and then they don't tell anything about the, employee at large. And so they're not almost in the same language. Like it really needs to be like consistent, I think, education and learning. And I think that's almost an opportunity for everybody to say, hey, we're all learning this together. Leaders, everyone, no one's an expert on this mental health stuff. Let's dive in. Let's agree that this is how our organization is going to be, how we're going to talk about mental health. And again, it has to do with that consistency across.
I love it. I could just talk to you for days, like days on end, just straight through. Let's just, because that common thread and having, this is where it connects to strategy and your mission, your vision, your values, the culture. Who are you trying to be? The culture is not just this cute word that's out there. It's not, and you're going to have one, whether you design it or it just manifests. It happens both ways. So wouldn't you rather be more intentional? Wouldn't you want people to matter at work, to feel connected, to feel like they understand? And you talked kind of like about a common language, like let's figure it out together. How do we talk about mental health? How do we treat each other? And one of the things that's really important that I see often is a gap is helping teams to really understand, check in on each other, and not just to your point of micromanage it. Leaders, please don't micromanage your teams for the reasons Kelly shared and many more, right?
Many more, yes.
Right.
Your own health too, managers.
Yes.
Really, it's for your own. Yes.
But also like teams and teammates cannot be nice to each other sometimes. And we own culture. It is dynamic. It's moving. Every single one of us, yes, it has to start at the top and be strategic, and there has to be buy-in. And that is a huge component. But we all get to control what that's like. If we could have the greatest organization led by the best leadership, however, if we're not treating each other kind as colleague to colleague, we're not collaborating, we're not sharing information, that is a hazard. And that's not going to be a safe workplace.
Right. And it's that, again, it goes back to that psychological safety. You have to feel overall that you can not only feel like you belong, that you can show up as yourself, but you can be vulnerable. You can share mistakes as well. That's also part of that. And again, I think that's okay in mental health right now. Like leaders are very afraid to approach the subject sometimes with people, even though they see people struggling, because I think they think of like, I don't want to break HIPAA, or I don't want to say something that's incorrect. And sometimes that could be a legitimate concern depending, but and I think that is where the training can come in, because it's more offering the resources to somebody, understanding, asking them what they need. I know it's such a simple concept, but so many people just don't say to someone, I see you're struggling. What do you need? How can I help you? Those simple words from a leader mean so much to someone who's really struggling with mental health at work.
Absolutely. And thanks for giving us some language and some curious questions, because questions, as I always say, take the defense down, and it shows that you care. You would rather have that question out there and have somebody know you care, even if you didn't say it exactly right. We can always apologize for something, but it's harder to step back from, oh, now it seems like I just didn't even care because I'm not even opening up the door to a conversation. When you do that and you show some vulnerability and some empathy, even if it didn't come out exactly right, let's have that conversation, because you've opened the door and now you're building trust, and that builds connection, and that makes, for psychologically safe workplaces. I see Sean Neal here's got a lot to say. I don't even know if it'll fit all on the screen. It will. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah. Hey,
Um,
Sean.
yes, I love this. Conversations like these about stigma, ongoing general education to break the chains of stigma are incredibly important. We definitely agree. And
Yes.
yes, awareness of stigmatizing their own attitudes, their language, beliefs, bias regarding how they view someone or has, yes, had a mental health need. Absolutely. And that becomes part of the stigma, right? But we all have bias. Just own it because it's not going away. It's how you
Yeah.
navigate it and manage it.
Yes. I think if we just, owning it as part of it, that is accept that this is a part of our brain, that this is how it is, and that is okay.
Yeah.
I know, Tiffany, you said I think you eliminated a word from your vocabulary to help destigmatize mental health. And I think about it all the time because, of course, I see the word, I try not to use it myself, but it is everywhere when you start to notice it.
Yeah.
But that is really, one thing I'm going to share this month is like, even the word, maniac, like that comes, from somewhere. So, how do you, use this language? And, someone is crazy. We hear this a lot. They're insane. I'm feeling, I have, some people just say casually now, I have PTSD. I just hear it like in normal conversation. I'm like, okay, this is like kind of just a time to correct that language too. And that is, we evolve. We look back shows, movies 20 years ago, we go, whoa, we use that language on a regular, like we forget because culture and language evolves, so quickly that we just need to accept that this is kind of part of that as well.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up that evolution too, because I think to Sean's point, the points we've been making, Melody made some points. It really is, we're so conditioned by society and even HR. That's why CEPHR, where we're in our CEPHR teas here, cultivating the evolution of professional HR because it has been an evolution. All professions, all people will evolve or should evolve, and that's just a part of life. And it's understanding that you may encounter a situation that you're not familiar with or you're not sure how to handle, but it doesn't mean that you're not good at your job or you're a terrible person. It means that our brains have a lot to work with and they are trying so hard to keep up with all the things and they take shortcuts and they need to like figure it out. But there is a very, I'm glad you brought up the point about trauma or PTSD, anxiety. So, that's another one that I'm not saying that's not a real feeling or experience for people, but
Right.
so much of our language is because we're used to it. And so we have to be careful with the things because those words can become weaponized really, or make someone feel they're not included or, ooh, I'm not going to say that because they just said the word crazy. And I don't know that I feel safe to share my stories and my experience with this person.
Exactly. Yes. All goes back to that culture. Everything goes back to culture, doesn't it? It really
It
does.
always does. Like this is what we're trying to help people understand is that it's not just this pie in the sky word. It really is the things we're doing, the fabric. How do we behave as an organization? What do we put out there for public consumption and even behind the doors? And what do we actually, what do we say versus what do we do? And are we just checking those boxes or are we having some intentionality behind what we're doing? And that's really key. And employees, we have the most generations in the workplace. Today, you were talking about generations. We have, boomers retiring. And so things are shifting very, very quickly. And we all have to be in this learning space and this curiosity to really be able to embrace the new world of work.
Yes, I completely agree. Yes, we can't say it any more. It's really a complete evolution, and as most, it's actually kind of interesting to say boomers are the ones retiring. Of course, this is it was at one time one of the biggest generations, so that is going to be I think, a big shift in workplace culture as that Gen Alpha moves in. So yes, I'm excited to see where it's going to go. This is one of the things about the profession I think that's really gets you passionate about it, that it is changing always.
Yes, absolutely. I absolutely agree. What else, Kelly, do you think? We've talked a lot about what we've done with our article, but One of the things I like to share in this mini series is to talk about what makes it work. So, if you're looking for a partner or you're trying to figure out the best way to collaborate with someone, again, whether you're in a traditional workforce or you're trying to scale a small business or a solopreneurship, what do you think has made it work between us? And like, what would be some key tips that you would maybe give people as they're looking to partner with others?
I would say, first of all, I think go back to find the champions in the organization. One way to do that is to have some type of mental health event, whether that's whether you hold a small learning event, a lunch and learn, you hold maybe a meeting to see if an ERG is something that the organization is interested. Those people who show up for those things, those are going to be the ones that are going to help you advance, forward. So number one, you have to find your mental health champions inside the organization. Two, build it out. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. Yes, we have the opportunity here in May. It's Mental Health Awareness Month. There's also an opportunity for International Mental Health Awareness Day in October. So there are those type of things that you can center your calendar, around. But really, you have to find out too, what is your organization? So starting even with assessments, engagement tools, and there are lots out there. I would love to refer people to. There are so many out there that really they go through the process of giving you the actual questionnaires and even tell you how to interpret it. So there are some things that you can do to even see like what does your organization need. And I think that's like most any strategic programming, right? You don't want to just throw things against the wall. You want to see, where are the gaps and how can you help? Leadership training and just really overall organizational training is key. And training doesn't need to be overbearing. We're not talking 8 hours with an HR person talking about mental health. These can be short, small bursts of like really just starting to ingrain the language. That is part of it. What are 5, top key mental health, terms? What are things that are, what are some statistics in 2023, some projections in 2024 that we see in mental health? Honestly, everyone in the organization should have a stake in it because as you mentioned, we're in teams, we all work with each other. So the more healthy, our coworkers are, the easier it is going to be, the more productive, we're going to be ourselves. So we really have a stake almost as a community to do that. But my thing is, I think to start small, start thinking about some of those key awareness days and build calendars out there, but put it into the strategic plans now for next year. That's what I would really say is that I think it seems like, we kind of get to the end of the year and people are like, oh, I wanted to put something in the budget for that, but I really didn't plan on what that was. So, what can I do? So I would say just start being proactive out there and really just look for resources. And that's what I hope that we can really start providing for people too, is get them the small actionable tools that they can do. They can
Love
use.
that. Like there's just so much gold in all of what you shared. And I think, one of the barriers that you touched on, it doesn't have to be a full day with HR. It doesn't even have to be HR, right? Or there
No.
could be collaborations. Look, we're demonstrating how this works to partner with other groups.
Yeah.
And it really makes a difference because micro learning is huge right now too. So
Yes.
those small bursts of learning, as you alluded to, and really just like connecting people to the fiber, the rate of change is so rapid right now. And we had this beautiful opportunity during the pandemic where we saw that a lot of people slowed down. We were, trying to recover from burnout or finally feeling like we had maybe gotten out of it. And then we ran right back to the rat race, many people. And our burnout the stress is high, which leads to
Coming
burnout.
back again. Yeah.
Yes. And worse than ever.
Worse.
Leaders are burning out. There's decision fatigue. There are so many factors. And so with proper planning and support, you can really, and supporting each other, right? Like those little things. That's why Gallup has a question, do you have a best friend at work, on their engagement survey? And people snark at it, they laugh, they snicker, but it's for a reason. It's scientifically proven that people who feel connected, which is essentially what it's getting at, are going to perform better. They're going to be better brand ambassadors. That is going to up your profits and your competitive advantage in the market. There are reasons why we do what we do, and it should be strategic, as we keep saying.
Yes, yes. As you know, most people are connected to some person or some people in an organization, not the brand per se. So, right, they are there, and sometimes when those people leave, they will follow. We've seen that in HR. That happens a lot, particularly in management. So, people are really there dedicated to a person. So that's what you want across your whole organization. That should be like the gold standard. Is that you want everyone really dedicated to the team, which of course just overflows to the brand in general.
Absolutely. And all of these things, employers are always looking at costs and profitability, the bottom line. And when you have folks who are absent or they feel like they just can't take anymore, or they're like, why am I even here? Nobody cares about me. Having suffered, I'm very vulnerable and public about my 2 depressions that I've had from jobs. Like, you literally, it's why I say, I do what I do so that people aren't ruined from their workplaces at the end of the day, because I have been twice, and it's nothing to play with. And those little things matter. You don't know what somebody may be struggling with already. In my case, I really wasn't. At one point I was going through a divorce. So I guess I had some life that was happening. At another point, it was just broken down from different job factors. So workplaces should not cause people trauma. And that's why Kelly and I really are doing this and having, want to have this impact and have these meaningful conversations around how important mental health is at work in all of our lives, right? Because it doesn't stop at the door, whether it's virtual or physical door. But we want to be having these conversations.
Yes, I've been really just so fortunate to work with clients that really have these, kind of psychologically safe environments. And I think some of my favorite conversations are employees who come into the company, been there about 3-6 months, and then we talk and they say, I am still almost in shock. They're like, I don't know how to describe it, of the environment. They go, I came from such a toxic work environment that I almost don't know how to behave here, because everyone is so kind, thoughtful, empathetic. We all have this team collaborative environment, and they go, and I feel like I'm still suffering from my old environment. Like sometimes I get triggered by things that come up because I expect it to go a certain way, because that's how it used to happen. And it would cause me a lot of anxiety, would lead to depression. But now that doesn't happen. Like, everyone's so communicative. So you can see that, that is almost a form of, PTSD from the last environment, because you're taking that trauma and really kind of bringing it. And some people don't know how to deal with it, and they don't know, who do you talk to about that? What kind of support? And that is something that maybe an EAP would be a resource group inside the organization, because that's not the only person I've heard that type of conversation from many people, particularly since the last 3 years.
Same. And I guess, it's a gift to be working in such an environment that is healthy, and you're like, whoa. And I've had that too, because I have worked for some amazing employers as well. And you're just like, is this real?
Yeah.
The other shoe to drop. But I've also had those situations, even in my consultancy, where it was like, whoa, that just triggered me. So these things are long lasting, and it takes a long time sometimes for people to recover, and sometimes it never goes away. It's a matter of managing it. So helping somebody navigate that, I'd rather be that person than the person contributing to a toxic environment for them.
I mean, honestly, could you imagine that being part of your onboarding process? I mean, if they say, I know this is a new environment. We don't know what's, happened with your past workplace. If you start to feel overwhelmed, if you feel like you need support, go to this person here. We can offer this to you. I mean, I feel like that would just that's one of those, again, proactive things I think you can do right up front. And man, I think that would really help with retention.
Seriously. And it's this, the creativity to think outside the box. We don't always have to do what's always been done. Certainly that's not going to get us where we're going, but there's such a tendency sometimes to follow too, instead of creating your own path. Every business, every culture is unique. So don't be afraid to ask your employees and to do something with that engagement surveys and the other pulse surveys that you're doing. You're collecting that data, and it is a gold mine of data for a reason. So leverage that. And it's something that you definitely want to be doing for sure.
That is something, again, I think would be one of those, first steps. If you consistently do engagement surveys in the organization, and I know orgs that do them, and then again, there's not much action taken on them, or I see orgs do them and then they kind of cherry pick the information that they share from the survey. So it's not the hard work stuff. It's the stuff like that they're doing great, which is good to share what is going well. But I think it's also good to be vulnerable and share the hard stuff too. But that's where I think like maybe, a consultant can come in too and almost look at it from that outside perspective of like, okay, let me look at these last surveys. Here's what I'm seeing a pattern of. Here's what we can tackle immediately. And then it's such an excellent measuring tool when you do it that way, because you've already have the data started. You measure that in 6 months and a year and see where people are at too. And I guarantee there will be a difference. The ROI on mental health is like a 4-to-1. So it's really a no-brainer when you think about it.
True story. Keeping us on our toes here. Jesse has a question he's sharing. How would one approach their organization when the organization is not following its own policy on mental health? Ooh, that's a doozy and a good one. Thank you for that question. Keep the questions coming, y'all, and your feedback, your thoughts.
So, this is difficult when any organization doesn't follow their own policies. So I will just kind of speak to that. That already is one I think challenging. Number one, again, you have to be in an environment where you feel safe to bring that up. Is this something that you can speak about with your manager? I see that the policy, number one, isn't being followed or isn't being followed consistently, which is what I see a lot in organizations, is that there seems to be a lot of organizations, what they call injustice, where so there's like sets of rules for some, not sets of rules for others. One thing I would, if my interest is a place appropriate to go to, a lot of times your employee handbook will tell you what to do in that direction, like who should you bring it to first, depending on the size of the organization. If you have a good relationship in HR, they will usually be the ones just to give you the direction, to say, hey, here's who I think you should go to, here's how we should approach this. But really, first of all, I'm glad to hear they have a mental health policy.
No, that was my first thought.
Because that's step one, is that they adopted it. They got something, they implemented it. Of course, step two is following that and really, and doing the practice part too. One thing that you can do also is even request some training on the policy. So oftentimes, we get these employee handbooks and they are sometimes hundreds of pages and they have all these policies in them. And so one of the things we do is sometimes just pull out policies that we want to highlight. That would be a great policy to highlight, particularly, of course, during this month. And then it's an opportunity to kind of everybody be on the same page. Like, okay, we're going over this policy. Here's what it is for everyone in the organization. Yeah, I would say leadership, a small workshop or a small video on the policy, and record it and make people watch it.
You can watch it as a team. You should put these things as part of your agenda. I was going to share that earlier with something you were sharing. Really everything, like involve your team in the process and ask, what does this mean to you? What do you think? Because policies are meant to be interpreted. They're meant as a guideline, but they're never solid. And we work with our legal partners. HR is real close with our legal partners. And the language is designed to be broad by design, because you can never fit every single situation in. So it becomes like those norms and the things that, what do we do in practice? Not that there should be a huge disparity between the policy and practice, because that happens too, but talk about it. Leave space on agendas. It's one of the easiest ways. You're already doing a weekly, quarterly, monthly, maybe you're doing a daily stand-up or huddle. Have those brief bits of conversation and see what's on their mind. Are there policies that they're not understanding? Or what does a mental health policy look like? You could have a couple of my clients have smaller working groups who really help shape policies, and they bring forward like, Have we looked at this policy in a while? Hey, I read some research on this for our industry. Can we shape the way that's shifting? And that's what you want. Those are invested, engaged employees.
And you can say, hey, I saw this great LinkedIn Live and they were talking about mental health policies and, how effective they are when they're applied and consistently across the board. So really it is using those resources out there, right? We're talking about this. We're not the only ones talking about it. This is a topic, that organizations really need to be more proactive at. But again, I'm happy to hear that there is a policy in place.
Yes. And I appreciate that question, Jesse, and the feedback we've gotten from the audience here and please share, whether you're watching live, share more. If you're watching on replay at a later point, definitely let us know what you'd like to see, where maybe you see some gaps out there or what was missing. Because one of the things that I love to share with employers is onboarding and the importance of that. So to your point, Kelly, like, hey, if this was part of the onboarding, that is such a critical point because in those first days, people are deciding whether they're going to stay with your organization or not. And so you want to engage them right away and really make sure that you're continuing to make these efforts and strides towards strategies toward retention. It's very, very important, but we're looking to continue to expand our collaboration and partnership on creating a toolkit. So we want to know from you what you're looking for in there. What are those gaps? Like we said, what would be helpful, whether you're an HR person, a leader, an employee? We want that 360-degree view of feedback so that we're creating something that's going to be useful. What else would you like to add on that to that about our toolkit, Kelly?
Well, the policy is part of that because, fortunately, I'm a policy person too. To me, there has to be some kind of backbone there. Again, because it goes back to how does it apply? So we go back and say, here it is. It's in, it has to be applied consistently because it goes across and we're all acknowledging it too. So we are saying that this is something, as an organization, we're agreeing to do. So policy is good. I love the idea of a task force. That is one thing that I've helped organizations do is to really kind of get their feet wet and to start, again, find the champions, start that 2 to 3 person, task force and make it small steps. Again, I kind of, even though a lot of times I'll just repeat, it, originates underneath HR's umbrella, I don't feel like they need to be the ones to have to do the entire part of the work. And honestly, I feel like others want to be part of it because the more they advocate for it, the more they're going to feel safe in the environment. So they're almost, everyone is invested, I think, to make the environment better. Absolutely. So policy's got to be part of it. Like you said, though, everything, needs to be customized to an organization, to an industry, but this definitely goes across, whether you're a small business, that's, doing something in the automotive industry or whether you're a large pharmaceutical, organization. You still need all of this. You have, 5 employees, you have 50,000 employees. These are still things that your company needs. It comes down to, the measuring as well. I think that's important to start. And I think, again, people don't know sometimes where to do. Perfect place. Current engagement surveys gives you the perfect place to really get started. And then you can, move on from there. Because as we know, with every program, any investment in an organization, there needs to be some kind of return. Yes, we hope that everyone wants to do everything from the, to make a person feel whole and welcome, for the goodness. But honestly, it is a return. And there is one. It makes more productive workers. It does make them more innovative. That actually leaves, instead of their brain being clogged up with stress about being micromanaged or working in a team that has a lot of conflict, that brain has space to think about how to make your company better. So I try to think about that too. Think about how much space sometimes, in our day can be taken up by these hazards at work, these mental hazards, and how much time really it's taken away. And again, just the toll that takes, not only on being absent, takes the physical toll on someone. I've seen people, sometimes you have to go on, medications as a result of, some kind of, mental trauma because it's affecting you physically. That is a cost to the organization. Short-term, long-term disabilities, all those things, that go in that category. And of course, what we just talked about, the turnover. I couldn't agree more about the onboarding. As we know, when someone comes on your company, they didn't just apply to your company in this little box. Likely they had this broad range, and that means they're going to be on the market potentially for at least the next 3 months, where they will potentially be contacted by other employers, and they could potentially take sometimes a lot of hard work and training you've already put into somebody in a couple of months. So I think retaining is a big number there too. You want to is a big reason. As you know, the number for retention, I can't remember. I've used it in a long time, but I think is it 3-to-1 for the amount of the salary. But when you think about what goes into talent, the loss of production, the time of recruitment, the time of, interviewing managers, like all of that, it's tens of thousands.
It's a lot. And, really, I love that you talked about innovation, because people don't realize how much being in a hazardous work environment, a toxic work environment, and not psychologically safe environment really does inhibit innovation. And when we're talking about absenteeism or people having to go on medication, that drives up healthcare costs, not only for the organization, but for us as a whole, as an economy. And so really just think about these things and, lean on us as resources. Thank you, John, we're glad that this has been helpful information. We're glad that everyone has joined. We're closing up on our hour already. Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. That's my replacement word for crazy. And I might be looking for a different one. So if you have any ideas, this is a step. We had, as an HR team at one of my workplaces, we committed to that as a team to try to help be a part of destigmatizing mental health. So what are you hoping for next for us, Kelly? I know we're going to work on the team. Yes.
Yes. I want to give people the resources. I think that's really key. There's so much out here now during May. Obviously, you want to gather as much as you can. I've spent the last 3 years of my career dedicated really to how to bring those resources to people. I have, as Tiffany will say, I have a plethora of knowledge, a lot of free tools out there too that you can use. But again, just to guidance. How do you make this work? For your company, and I think the toolkit, like most things, it's a starting point. It gives you a couple key things to work on to be strategic and for a jumping off point.
Yeah, I love it. I'm so excited for what we're going to do next. I love that we share, all my partners share values, those great values, because that's one of the things, we're talking about culture and leadership and diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, which mental health falls under. But you really have to have these synergies with each other to be able to collaborate. You have to have a shared understanding and flexibility. We have that with each other. It's one of the things that I love about working together, where we're like, okay, a lot on the plate right now. Let's pause it. Let's adjust our timeline. These are just good workplace practices and leadership skills, and ways to build empathy and trust in a good working relationship. So if you're out there and you're working with people, those are good practices that we found, a lot of alignment into.
Yeah, empathy, as you know, that's been a big kind of buzzword too for leadership for a long time. We know we need more empathetic leaders, and you honestly cannot, talk about mental health. You cannot have psychological safety or belonging without that. And I think even just the education of what is empathy is even part of that. Again, some of it's just like language, because it is confused with sympathy in a lot of times. And if you think about, something from another person's perspective, that will help you with mental health and really destigmatizing.
Yeah, and we should always be open to other perspectives. It's how we learn. It's how DEIB grows. It's how organizations become more creative and leading and innovating. It's the ones that lag the market are the ones who are like, nope, this is how we did it. It's how we're going to do it, or who are too prone to following others. be excited about creating your own something and involve your team in that, and let that be in a psychologically safe environment. And those are things we can support you with. Reach out to either of us. You can find our co-written article on
Yep.
each of our pages on our LinkedIn. I'll drop a link to that as well, so you have that. And then, just thanks everybody for joining always. I love hearing from you. I love highlighting these amazing partners and the work that they're doing. I learned so much from them. So it's just a gift to be able to bring people like Kelly on and have them share their story, and just bring more perspectives on these topics. So really just thank you, Kelly, for sharing your wisdom with us. And don't forget to let us know what you want in this toolkit, what you could use more supported in your workplaces, as a team, as a leader. We really, as an organization, would love to hear that and hear from you. And you can watch our past episodes of this mini series on YouTube. I'll also pop a link for that in there. But we want to hear from you. Tell us what else you want to learn. You have questions or thoughts you want to share, send us a DM, and we'd love to hear from you. But thank you, everyone, and Kelly, for being here today. Really appreciate your time, and we're looking forward to hearing from you soon. And John has a parting thought here for us, that synergy, empathy, and educational evolution are definitely a necessary pedagogy. Absolutely. Say it again, John.
All those. Yes. Give circle claps.
We're here for it. Thank you all so much. We really appreciate your time. Kelly, you're a gift, and I'm looking forward to what we do next. Have a great week.
Awesome. Thanks, Tiffany.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.